Welcome to another episode of Founders Club. Today we're going to be talking to Matt Gartland, who is business partners with Pat Flynn, co-founder of Smart Passive Income Media and Fusebox. And he's also an expert when it comes to business marketing, community building, and big picture strategy. We're going to be talking about how you can future-proof your real estate business, sharing some smart passive income and marketing strategies to do more deals, and tips on turning your real estate database into a community of raving fans that love to work with you and love to refer you business. If you have any questions, put them in the box down below. Make sure you judo chop that like button so other people just like you can find this video. Also, we have a brand new Facebook group that you guys can check out. The links will be in the description. And as always, if you like money, if you like real estate, hit that subscribe button because this is the show for you. We'll see you on the inside. Welcome to Founders Club, the show for real estate entrepreneurs. All right, very excited to be here with Matt Gartland. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
I'm thrilled. I really appreciate being here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are, a partner at Smart Passive Income Media. And for those that don't know, that's Smart Passive Income. It's a big community, blog, network, training center around all things passive income. And so very excited to be kind of talking about all that today. I know you're also in charge of their, strategy and operations and all that. So I really want to break down how us as entrepreneurs can kind of leverage your strategies and what we can do through all of that stuff. So before we get into all that, though, why don't you just give us a brief background on how you got started in the game?
My gosh, yeah, no, I appreciate it. The story didn't start maybe in the most conventional places. I had a really good corporate career for a long time, a leadership track there, but I was kind of that kid, all the way back that had lemonade stands and was doing things that were essentially entrepreneurial, right? I always kind of had that bug. So, kind of hit a point in my leadership career in corporate where it's like, I really got to like double, triple down on this thing. And I'm going to make that longer term commitment or get out, honestly, and start trying my own startups and ventures. And I made that call and I'm grateful I did. Probably like a lot of the folks listening, maybe are contemplating that choice or have a similar kind of journey, already behind them a bit. But that led me online and starting, to think about how, through the connection of technology and media, in the blogosphere kind of really starting to erupt back then. And I'm talking like 2010, 2011, 2012 era, right? Like how can I lean into this space given my background in technology and business strategy, business administration, right? So that led me to a meeting, just phenomenal people online, and they became friends. But it's crazy, right? These stories where you start to develop relationships with folks that you've never met before in the real world. So fasting forward to today, I met Pat, my business partner. He's actually the creator of SPI from the way back. But his growth along with my own over time, we just realized that we were sort of a really powerful yin and yang complement. So I had a creative agency at the time that was doing well. He was technically a client for a bit, but we merged together at the end of 2018 into now SPI, larger as a media organization, a media company, and community is the nexus. And we've been really able to leverage even more current state type technologies to make that real, more so than just like a Facebook group, but a really like peer-to-peer oriented, almost private network with education and content, with special events and experiences, all governing to help entrepreneurs find business success and outcomes, based on whatever their journeys are. So that's maybe as short as I want to go, but I could probably talk for an hour.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that a lot. And the reason I wanted to have you on is because I do think that, that's a really important component. And I'm curious to see what your thoughts are in terms of like how entrepreneurs should be looking at passive income in kind of today's environment.
Yeah, and I think for probably a lot of the folks listening that are, brokers, real estate agents, there's ways of thinking about just systemization of the value that you're providing that then does not require just continuing to trade time for dollars. That's a big part of the ethos that we have in thinking systematically and strategically about all sorts of different businesses. And because we are online and a lot of our members and students happen to be online entrepreneurs, that's not exclusive. We do have, a lot of folks that are running local coffee shops, or that are, have yoga studios, or that have some version of a real life business. We definitely have real estate agents and folks kind of in that broader even some business real estate, right? So it's more the strategies and the mentalities than any kind of one specific business model in terms of, again, who we serve and the value that our curriculum and our communities are providing. A major thing is just thinking about how you can provide potentially a subscription-based product so that you have a direct relationship ultimately with your customer. You're not relying on another platform or a third party, for a lot of that revenue generation. Having those though in place can be supplemental and still very valuable. It's something that we have learned over a decade of doing what we've been doing at SPI. And it is even, we are living this ourselves in terms of having pivoted in a big way a lot of the model from, say, affiliate revenue. We still make some, from referral sources. It's still really valuable even for folks maybe listening to think about, affiliates. It's still a part of the model. It's just not the biggest piece. How can we supplement that, grow that? And at this point, we're prioritizing, that direct relationship over the folks we're serving, but with, subscription-based offerings that is just driving our own MRR. And we are finding that, when we continue to invest in those relationships that way, it's certainly, improving that passiveness in terms of more predictability to the revenue generation. You can even see with data analytics and technology that can help you see it, just like what those inflows are looking like into your business. You can just predict your profits that much better, right? And you can build into these rhythms and these mechanics that, again, are less just doing a one-time consultation project, consulting, or just trying to close some singular deal that might have a nice check or payday next to it. But that presents a lot of volatility, into your business. So how can we smooth that out? How can we bring in, recurring revenue sources that are much more automated and on autopilot?
Right. Yeah. And some of the ones that, I think would be great for like the real estate community is obviously, you mentioned affiliate offers. I think there's a lot of affiliate offers out there that can be either bolted onto a transaction or embedded into a blog or anything like that, which is a great way to kind of build that passive income on the side. I also think that, things like growing a YouTube channel, building, an Instagram page are all ways that you can monetize just by creating content off of the things that you're already doing. And I think what are your thoughts are on, on that in terms of how real estate agents can capitalize?
Exactly right. In terms of trying to leverage what you're already doing, I would say if you're going to do some sort of like a SWOT analysis about your business and where you're already potentially putting energy that might have some expanded opportunity, I completely agree. And it serves even sort of a multi-purpose potential objective, which is, that's a lot of top of funnel. If you think about, trying to grow a YouTube channel, and you can potentially then monetize that. And YouTube is just continuing to kind of like gobble up the world. It seems like podcasting is their next big thing. They're rolling out a lot of new native podcast capability. You can basically now, or in short order, have a podcast that's just hosted straight up on YouTube. Then yeah, like you can grow your audience, expand your reach, begin to monetize the channel itself, as that continues to grow. You could bring on sponsors or just be able to discuss and talk about certain product types that have an affiliate component to them that sort of even add yet another revenue stream, into your business. And it's a cut once, but you're yielding several different potential revenue points, right? So yeah, completely agree. And especially with anything online these days, kind of swimming where there's a lot of fish. YouTube, again, in terms of it's a search engine, like it's one of the biggest search engines, right? It's phenomenal,
Exactly.
and there's a lot of energy being invested there.
And then not only that, you're monetizing on your content, but you're also going to get more eyeballs, which gets you more deals. So you're kind of double dipping, which is, obviously good for business.
Yeah, and should you then even come online down the road, say with a private membership community,
Right.
I know I'll probably keep emphasizing this, but we really believe in its potential. Then you just at the end of all of your videos, give them that call to action, right? Like, cool, you've talked about a product, you've added value through the content itself. The channel itself is generating revenue for you, hopefully, certainly at a scale point. But then lend them that call to action, that singular, very consistent message. Like, look, if you want to learn more, connect with maybe me a little more directly, but also especially tap into this private network, that I've been building through my community. Go here, check it out. It's a very reasonable, monthly charge or whatever it is, right? Can be yet another way to keep adding on as the stack, a lot of these recurring revenue sources.
Yeah, I like that. And that's probably especially good if you're specializing in some sort of a niche, like if you're great at finding investment properties, or you're great at, helping probate situations, or if you're great at 1031 exchanges, you could create a little membership site community, which will, again, bring extra revenue in a passive manner and help you get more deals.
The more specific you can be, the better. As Pat would say, the riches are in the niches, meaning like the niches, right? So yeah, I think the more that you can be like hyper focused on a particular market segment, build relationships that way, be able to even think about, just even more B2B kind of opportunities. Yeah, like the more specific, the better. You don't need 10,000 people in a community to have it be hyper successful. Honestly, you could be tremendously successful with just 100, right? Especially if you're charging, $100, a couple $100 a month, like that gets really interesting in terms of its compounding effect.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So on that note, one thing that I've really watched, Pat and yourself do over the years is really building a community. And I think that's something that we talk a lot about in terms of like people's databases, and how the majority of your business is going to come from your database, your community. So I'm just curious on your thoughts on what is involved in really building a strong community that's, rallies around one another, has a lot of value, refers business back and forth, all that.
There's this concept from Kevin Kelly, legendary entrepreneur business guy from years and years back, even a decade plus for sure, around like 1,000 true fans, and it's been leveraged into a lot of different manifestations. So like that idea of being able to put out value, to nurture an audience, and be able to eventually sort of at almost like a funnel standpoint, find those, 1,000 true fans or super fans or whatever you want to call them, kind of remains the prevailing idea in North Star for a lot of these sorts of businesses that are rooted in, say, a personality, that are rooted in, a lot of storytelling and connecting other people together, and being very genuine in sort of that value exchange. And that's an absolute number. I don't mean it to be overly absolute, though. It's just that kind of that concept of the 1,000 true fans. The essence of community is naturally imbued into that. So if you do it well, it's almost going to happen by itself, in terms of being able to have that level of trust and reciprocity that begins to form when you're helping people in that way. One important thing that we do talk about is the important distinction, however, between audience building and community building. When you're building audience, those are going to be your larger numbers, your larger databases. That's going to be your email marketing list, right? And you want to hopefully grow that as large as possible. That's probably going to be your more top of funnel channels, right? So hopefully, a large YouTube channel or a podcast or your social properties. That's audience building so that you can begin to kind of earn that trust, right? From the folks that are starting to discover you, learn from you, connect with you, ask some questions. But when you think about, again, that funnel design and you lead them deeper into it, maybe you want to get them out of email. Maybe you do want to bring them into an event space, right? That you're running from time to time. You kind of get a little bit closer, with them and them with you. If you actually offer a legitimate community, and you can build community these days on platforms like Circle, there's Mighty Networks, there's Heartbeat. There's a growing ecosystem of better technologies that are not social media platforms. They are intended to be explicitly community platforms. Such that you can have a private community, a private network. So think about social media as like a public network. You can build private networks that you can then again monetize if you want, through direct memberships and subscription-based billing mechanics, right? And then the synthesis, the amazing connection between building audience well, nurturing those relationships, and then if you want, really compelling them to join something that's potentially that much more integrated into actual community is something of a holy grail as we see it these days with business.
Yeah. I almost look at it like in real estate, building a farm is really important, and a lot of top agents are winning because they dominate their either neighborhood or their market or a small farm. And I think the building community aspect is perfectly applicable there, because it's like, host the neighborhood garage sale, host, bring in a taco truck once a month or once a quarter to bring everybody together and kind of, foster that community aspect. And I think that will, net result, allow you to grow your business.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have a really good buddy here who is a real estate agent. He's my friend. He's also my agent. He helped us get the house that we're in today. Typically works on like higher end kind of residential, deals. And he has a really successful just practice and business at large. But we're talking about like how can he potentially build some of these things even digitally, right? To
Mhm.
complement what he's already doing, to tap into the relationships and the networks he already has. A lot of people go to Neil because they know and trust Neil, for recommendations to, companies that do remodeling, or or maybe looking for an off-market deal, with some of the properties that he represents. That sort of stuff is just gold when you can think about potentially encapsulating that into like a private sort of an experience that like you maybe only get in if you know it's there, almost like a speakeasy, depending on again
Right.
some of almost like the marketing you want to do around it.
Yeah.
And then if you're inside, my gosh, like it's a treasure to be there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then on the other side of that, there's like building communities around things that you like to do. Like if you like wine, right? Start a little wine club or a cigar club or a car club or a mommy stroller group or whatever. There's so many different ways that you can kind of build that community and then leverage it to become the authority in that group, and then leverage that for business, referral, relationships,
Hmm.
connections, etc.
That's exactly right. And it's an interesting maybe angle of thinking about, okay, how do I find and diversify even my income streams, right? Away from just like my primary thing. So if real estate is your primary thing, that's great. But as you get successful and there's maybe some working capital there to leverage, you could begin to, if you have a real passion and a deep interest in something else, that has maybe nothing to do with real estate, start doing that and find more passive income generation sources that way. Pat's even
Mhm.
another good example of this, and it's very maybe weird to say, but he's killing it, which is Pokemon trading cards of all things, which are kind of going through this crazy resurgence.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a kid from the '80s, so like I went through the first wave of this, and they're kind of coming back around. So was Pat, and just for kicks, like he dusted off his old cards and kind of started to plug into this new network that he'd never been a part of before in terms of like online communities, but it's massive. And he created a dedicated YouTube channel just for Pokemon cards, and he's blowing up. He's like a Pokemon influencer now. His channel has probably 500,000 subscribers. He's crazy monthly monetization from Pokemon cards. It has
Right.
nothing to do like with what we're doing at SPI. It's like a
Yeah.
hobby project that he's done on the side, but he's able to leverage a lot of the same skills, right,
Yeah.
as transferable skills, and that I think is maybe a teachable point, to maybe anyone listening, to find other ways of really successful income generation, not always so directly in like the immediate thing that you're doing maybe
Yeah.
day over day right now.
Yeah. No, exactly. I like that. How funny Pokemon cards. That's
Yeah, I mean, I question my choices sometimes now that I
yeah,
see like how well he's doing with Pokemon cards. Like,
it's
man,
crazy.
no, it's
Just goes
awesome.
to show you though, there's a market for almost everything.
There really is. There really is. Absolutely. So just be imaginative. And, I know a lot of people listening are creative and they have big ideas, and that's fantastic because it's as easy as ever in terms of again the technologies and finding other people that have a shared interest, and however small that may be. And again, oftentimes the smaller the better. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. So one thing you mentioned is the email component of that too. And I know that, in building a community, email is a great way to do it. But what can you tell us about kind of email best practices in terms of, asking for business, and how you guys approach nurturing and getting business from your email list?
On the front end of the email experience, an a informative and helpful newsletter is as successful as ever as a concept, as like a hook or lead magnet sort of a thing to get someone to even put in their email address and subscribe from the jump, right? It's less effective, or it's a little older in the tooth to be offering like a free ebook or downloadable. Those things still can work, maybe at different parts in your nurture sequence. But where we are seeing others that are just killing it with email, whether they be kind of personal brands, creators, as kind of the new sticky term, entrepreneurs in some fashion, is publishing, a very helpful, informative newsletter. People are more discerning, as ever these days, including with social media, but even with email, in terms of what they're receiving and allowing into their inbox. So it does up the ante a bit, as someone who is maybe trying to invest in building out their email list. Why should I even stay on this thing? Maybe even after a couple reps at receiving an email. So, if you are endeavoring to do that, I'd say the bar is a little bit higher these days in terms of like the value you're trying to deliver. And a newsletter is a really great way to prove that value. There's different methods and technologies to use. Substack is probably the largest these days and the most successful. So, anyone can just create, a newsletter off of Substack. It doesn't have to be paid, but you can, in fact, directly monetize newsletters also. And you can even pursue hybrid solutions or setups to where, okay, I publish a free newsletter once a month. If you join, you get the monthly version, for free. But if you want to pay $5 a month, $10 a month, or whatever you want to charge, right, then you get my weekly one as well, right? That goes deeper or has extra value, right? So newsletters is gold right now. Tons of folks are finding great success. It comes with, again, sort of the obligation of being consistent. So if you're going to start that, it's kind of like you got to keep going if you want to maintain some success and keep building the momentum there. Once you get them in, to your next part there around just like nurturing, how do you do that? I guess there's different ways to think about it. Are you trying to nurture them towards, probably some sort of a sale? So, what is that hero SKU or kind of seminal product as a part of your business, or whatever this is? If it's away from real estate and this is, a sort of side hustle thing that you want to monetize, and maybe it's in Pokemon cards or something else, right? Like, what is that thing that ultimately you're trying to nurture them to? So, like, what is the goal? I'd kind of start there in the thinking. It could even be like affiliate stuff, and we did this for a long time. We still do this. It's still kind of baked into our nurture sequences is, you're not maybe so much, trying to sell your product, but maybe you're just trying to genuinely talk about your experience with someone else's product. And, then there's an affiliate link there. Always though, you are trying to just consistently kind of better understand their pain points. If possible, based on the email system you're using, you can ask them questions and then have them like respond, click different things in your emails, and then you can capture additional data. You talk again very, very correctly just about like the database itself. If you can authentically prompt people in the right kind of moments through an email sequence to like better learn about them, the personalization, right? So that I know maybe where you live, or really how do you self-identify as an entrepreneur or a certain kind of customer, because we serve entrepreneurs broadly, but do you more associate as a podcaster? Do you more associate as an entrepreneur? Are you a web designer? Like, there's a lot of different, at least in our world, maybe subtypes, right? So a really effective approach generally to email marketing and nurturing them is to just ask them good questions and better understand, so that you can better tailor the content delivery to them. So that's sort of that reciprocity component. And then you want to deliver on that, don't abuse it. When you learn more about them, they're giving you more data about themselves. Then you can systematically within the email programs, we use ConvertKit as an example, and you can do this really well in ConvertKit, is then create like email funnels, for particular like avatar types or sub avatar types, after people start to tell you a little bit more about themselves.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One of our friends of the channel, Ricky Caruth, he talks about he does a weekly email. It's every Wednesday, and it's not it's not dump them into your autoresponder and forget about them. He does a current email every week. He's got a new picture at the top of his market, crispy, nice image. He puts in a deal of the week so that there's always new, fresh stuff in there. He talks about the things that are going on in the area, the neighborhood, concerts, anything like that. And just a high value newsletter that he just sends out once a week that he does great business with. Another friend of ours, he does the 10 most expensive homes in the market, and he's getting tons of people to just opt in to know every week to just get the 10 most expensive homes in the area. And the majority of those are just looky-loos, but he's getting a lot of deals out of it too, because they send it to a friend, or actual buyers are coming onto those lists, the high net worth buyers, and he's getting a lot of like really great clients from a simple email strategy like that.
In the simple, or the more simple, the better. Those are great examples. A lot of people, if they make any mistake at all, they over-engineer their concept, right?
Right.
It's a little too convoluted. It's too all over the place from one issue, to the next, sort of a thing. So no, those are great examples. It reminds me of Jason Pfeiffer, who's a friend of mine. He's the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. He has a personal newsletter, and his is simply called like One Thing Better. That's the name of his newsletter. It's the premise of the newsletter. And in every issue, it's just like one thing from a personal story. He's a very good storyteller. And it's meant to help you with one very approachable thing to help you make like one incremental but positive change forward. And if you can think about, okay, you stack that across a year's worth of issues, here's 52 things, right, on a weekly basis, that's going to help me make me better, right? So it's a very effective model, at least for him.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. Just add value, be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know you guys are big on, websites, blogs, content creation and all of that, but I'd be curious what your thoughts are in terms of how real estate professionals should be setting up their websites, given the fact that, they're facing competition from the likes of Zillow and Redfin. Like back in the day, it used to be, you would go to a realtor website to go look at properties and see what's available on the market, new listings coming soon, things like that. But now the consumer's almost been retrained to go to the Zillows, the Redfins, and those types of sites. So I'd be curious as to how us as real estate pros can kind of reposition our websites to add value, and kind of what your thoughts would be on that.
Yeah, I think you've even drifted into some really great ideas already by way of some of the examples. Maybe as a starting point is I wouldn't think about your web property being essentially a search platform, right? Because that is exactly what the Zillows of the world now do. And, I wouldn't think that an independent real estate agent, no matter how good you are, is probably going to overperform, Zillow and be able to change, market norms at this point. So instead, then I think about, who are you ultimately trying to serve in terms of a market? Are you maybe more buy side versus sell side? Are you in residential versus commercial? Things I would take guesses or make assumptions about, but based on the choices you would make there for yourself, begin to help by way of some version of content, or again, network effects for folks kind of in that particular, segment, right? So it could be, hey, like if you're in this, general area of the city, and maybe there's, I'm sure, like a geographic component to it. Like these are recommendations to, other service providers for lawn care, for, for remodels on a home. You could tell their stories and have sort of an expanded, almost recommendation engine that's not just about finding properties. It's about finding other people beyond, a transaction that's happening in terms of buying or selling a home. If you're in the home, how do you add value to the home? How do you increase the value of the home? How do you maintain that value? How do you think about, growing that over time, or positioning it? If you're thinking about selling, in a couple of years, maybe here are some things you want to be thinking about, investing into the home to, just have it be that much more attractive and command top dollar, when you are ready to sell it, in a couple of years. How do you nurture that relationship between these kind of transaction points that can be obviously like long, right? I don't know that many people that are, at least on the residential side, flipping their primary residence every couple of years, right? So, I think about, again, like service provider recommendations, stories from others that maybe you're serving as their agent, and can talk about that. You mentioned a great example just around like what's going on in the community, events, that are happening locally, or inside track on news or something that's maybe interesting. On the property side, if it made sense to, like off-market deals that aren't going to appear on Zillow, like that's, I think, where there could be some bleed over and crossover that maybe I have to come to your website or join that email list that you have, because that's where I'm going to find access to some of those listings that I wouldn't find access to anywhere else.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go straight out and try to like compete with Zillow. That doesn't
Yeah.
feel like an attractive business strategy. So I would swerve around that and think about how can I add value to a lot of these relationships around home ownership or just property ownership beyond just like a listing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the way we always say it is be hyper local, right? Zillow can't be hyper local. They can't be more local than you are if you're working
Mhm.
in your neighborhood every day. And so if you're doing content around, the restaurants, the parks, the events, the things that are going on, and then also another thing you can do is having like you mentioned, like a resources section, which has, basically you want to be a resource, you want to be of value, and you want to be hyper local. And if you focus your website around that, I think you'll have a lot more success than trying to just, have a home search function on there.
Oh yeah, completely agree. And then if again, not to keep overhyping it, but like the community aspect, you could get people to support each other, and then you become seen as like almost a hero in a certain regard for like, hey, you've amassed this collection of really awesome people, and then they're trading stories with
Yeah.
each other. It can be, if you do it well, like a better version of like a next door sort of an experience if you use that app. It's like people coming together to be able to like trade their own ideas. You're just the one that has been the spark, right, the connector that's brought these people together. You benefit from that as well, but they do too.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I love that idea. And a free way to do that is just by having a Facebook group, right? Have a Facebook group in your hyper local community. And that way you can allow the people in the community to engage. You can be adding value. You can be pointing people back to your list and the things that you're doing, the events that you're attending. You kind of become the authority and the leader of the group. But
That's
to
right.
your point, the community can also rally together and kind of do things together without you having to even be involved.
Yeah, which goes back to one of the big themes, right? Around kind of the passive nature of some of these opportunities that exist. When you can get the peer-to-peer connections really working, and you just kind of need to be there to stir the pot, and you have to do enough, but you don't have to be the center of, like, if you were to draw like the network diagram, you don't have to be the center of it. You're more the shell of it that's helped bring it together, right?
Yeah, exactly. And another thing too, and this is a tip we've shared a few times in the past, but I really like this strategy, and I've seen the people that have adopted it really win. Is these groups, they already exist. These YouTube channels already exist. These Instagram pages already exist. So if you can find a Facebook group in your local
Hmm.
community, a lot of them were started a few years ago. They've kind of been abandoned, and if you can just go in there, you can offer a little bit of money, you can take over one of these groups, and now you're not even starting from scratch, right? It might have a 500, 1,000 people already in there, and now you can just revitalize the group, and maybe you offer them, a couple $100 to take it off their hands. And the people that we've, shared this strategy with that have implemented it have all bought, assets, digital assets like Facebook groups, YouTube channels, things like that, for pennies on the dollar, and shortcutted their success because they're not having to start from zero. They're able to just acquire a group, in XYZ neighborhood, or, beach houses in San Diego, or any of those types of groups that you think would be a good fit, and have your avatar. And that's kind of a great way to kickstart
Yeah.
that process.
Exactly right. I mean, I couldn't even tell you probably how many Facebook groups exist, these days, but there's a lot out there. So
Yeah.
um, you don't have to maybe, start from scratch or start from zero, but first go and do some research and see what else might already be out there that you can start to tap into, help add value, and potentially claim in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right. Love that. Want to shift gears a little bit. Um, I want to talk about building our business for the future. And I know that you're big on, strategic frameworks, things like that. So how should we be looking at building for the future, strategic frameworks, things like that?
Yeah, there's maybe even like two puzzle pieces there that fit together. The one is just the practice of doing strategic planning. I'll oftentimes, at least in the internet world, online business and others that are more the solopreneur types. You're running your own enterprise of some kind. Doesn't have to be online. We are the driving force of these things. We're the creative person. So maybe sitting down and doing planning and looking at numbers and running, calculations and developing forecasts. Sometimes that feels maybe alien or unnatural, but it is important. And I think over time, as any business kind of finds itself and finds its footing, really begins to hone in on who it's serving, these are good moments and opportunities to be like, okay, let's look at those patterns to the extent that you can identify patterns in the data you have, and then engage, yourself or maybe get help, or if you have a business partner, obviously involve that person and work through a strategic planning process so you are aligned on the sort of goals you're trying to achieve within a given quarter in a given year. A couple frameworks that are proven that I use, I recommend. There's the OKR framework, stands for Objectives and Key Results, kind of popularized by Google, if I remember its origin story correctly. There's the OGSM framework. It's very similar. O is the same, stands for objectives. G is for goals. Those would be analogous to key results. The S are then the strategies. So what is the work that we're going to do? Either doubling down on something that's already working, or saying, you know what, honestly, let's be humble for a second. This thing that we tried didn't work. Let's scrap that and let's reconsider some of our strategies, right? But strategies should be pointing towards goals. Otherwise, what the heck are we doing, right? So that's the practice that I think, is universal in the sense that, everyone listening in any sort of a market, at some point should be thinking about, strat planning. And then, the other puzzle piece there is like, okay, based on where you're at, how do we think about future proofing? So what are the strategies that we should be thinking about putting onto the strat plan that are going to make our businesses more resilient, right? Is the kind of the way I think about it. I think resiliency is a really important entrepreneurial quality just to begin with, right? As a characteristic. Online, we're going to have different adversity. We face different challenges and headwinds than maybe some of the folks listening, right, that are more in the real estate markets. So future proofing though is, again, and I'm going to be now hyper redundant on this, but I'd say coming back to the relationship. So the more that you can invest and establish and maintain the direct relationships without middlemen or gateways, in between, whether they be B2B partner referral sources and or just direct customers, the more that you can bring down those barriers, especially as people are more discerning with dollars, overwhelmed by choice. We're in now this hyper fractile attention economy where everyone is screaming online through social media, right? Like you have to work harder to maintain any sort of people keeping their focus on you, right? So, so yeah, that's where, again, direct community work, anything that's going to give you an opportunity to talk even face-to-face with someone, even virtually. So having, say you have an email newsletter, again, right, to go back to that example, maybe you should offer a free monthly webinar, on some very specific topic. Could be about hey, in this season of the year, here are some things that you should be thinking about for your home, right? For residential real estate. Come to this free thing. I'll be able to talk to you live, go to a registration page, use Eventbrite, something easy, right? So any way to keep that face-to-face kind of direct relationship in place is going to be time-tested, I think, future-proofing as far as I'm concerned.
Love that. Yeah, that's great advice. One thing you just mentioned was the OGSM framework: objectives,
Yes.
goals, strategies, and metrics. Why don't you just walk us through, in practical terms, how would we apply that to our business?
Sure. So an objective is a bigger picture idea. So I'll give an example from our universe. A very common and repeating objective for folks that come into contact with us and are really eager to become, say, a student or a member of our communities is that they have had a really successful, say, corporate career, and they have maybe burned down on that. So they want to transition sort of having a job to having a business that is at least generating the same level of income. So they want to replace their 9-to-5 job with their own, solopreneur venture that's making at least the same, if not more. And say they want to do that in 12 months, so, hey, in a year, I want to go from here to there, right? So that's the transformation that they want. So that would be the objective, and you can really then write that in a succinct way such that it kind of remains your North Star that you never lose sight of. It's always guiding your thinking, informing of your top level decision making, that would be a representation of like a guiding objective within a time frame. You always need a time frame. It doesn't
Okay.
have to be a year. What's even sometimes advisable at the objective level, and that informs everything else to come after it, is if you've never done strat planning before, again, if it feels maybe unnatural, maybe don't take the big swing at a whole year, right? Because stuff happens and you need to adapt and make changes. So maybe just start with a quarter. So only to start with 3 months, or again,
So
depending on.
does that look like in the next 3 months, I'm going to accomplish this big thing?
Yeah, exactly. So this bigger idea. So, and you could
Okay.
step backwards. Reverse engineering stuff, or working backwards is always pretty useful. At least I think so. So if you have this general notion or feeling, again from our world, that I want to leave my 9 to 5 job and I want to have achieved financial independence on my own, and basically have replaced my income on my own in a year. Okay, but I don't want to do a whole strat plan for a year. That feels maybe too heavy for me. What is a really big milestone that's mid-year? So in 6 months, I want to have my side hustle going. Maybe I haven't quit my full-time job yet, which would be wise. Just don't rush out and do that. Get the side hustle off the ground, and maybe by 6 months, I want it to be generating a certain amount of revenue, right? So it doesn't have to be halfway. Things aren't always linear. But that might be the big objective, is to have a revenue generating side hustle up and running 6 months in, right? That might be kind of a half step there, right? Then underneath that, what are specific goals, probably more than one, that are indicative of you making progress towards achieving that bigger idea, at the objective level. So you may have an audience building goal, right? So again, continuing to draw on my experience and whom we serve through SPI, do you have a top of funnel maybe goal? I want to launch and grow a YouTube channel to 1,000 subscribers. That 1,000 subscribers would be a very specific goal.
Mm-hmm.
I want so many email subscribers. I want so much revenue, maybe as well. So things that are quantifiable, and especially highly advisable to have a like X to Y component when you're setting goals. Like today, even if it's zero, like today I have no email subscribers. At the end of the time frame I'm declaring, I want to go from 0 to 100, or 0 to 1,000, or 0 to 10,000. So it's very clear what the transformation is, that you're trying to achieve. So goals are outcomes. They shouldn't be inputs. They shouldn't just be like, oh, cool, I launched the thing. Well, that's great, but that's not the point. You launched the thing to hopefully have achieved a result. What is the result of doing the thing that you launched,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So that's at the goal level. And then again, strategies underneath that, that is the work, right? It's like,
Like,
okay,
what
I'm
am I going to
going,
do to get to that goal?
cool, I want to create a side hustle in 6 months that's generating $5,000 a month in recurring revenue. Great goal. Fantastic. What the frick are you going to do to achieve that? Right?
Right.
What's the work? Those are strategies. Okay, cool. I need to, join some local organizations for networking, because, I'm going to play into some partnerships. I need to then launch an email newsletter, right? To really captivate my own private audience, right? As well. So that's another strategy. And strategies should hopefully kind of support one another, right? But they're
Mm-hmm.
independent tracks of work. So then you
Got it.
define that out. Those are the strategies.
Okay. So if I was to say, let me try this. So if I say my objective is to do, an extra 10 transactions in the next 6 months, then my goals are, I want to build my database, let's say to 1,000 people, and I want to, acquire a Facebook group like we talked about, and I want to whatever another one is, right? I want to make a 1,000 calls, and then breaking that down to the strategy level. If I want to make 1,000 calls, that's pretty easy. I just break that down by number of days. If I make X number of calls a day, I will have hit that. Breaking down what maybe a list of Facebook groups I want to acquire, and then maybe different methods I can use to grow my database to get to my goal there. And then is that kind of like the
Yeah,
right
that's pretty
idea?
good. Yeah, especially for just like you and me doing this off the top of our head.
Freestyling? Okay, good.
Oh yeah.
And
I
then
mean,
go ahead.
oh yeah. Sorry. I might even sort of encourage you to dream a bit bigger on the objective side. Maybe the objective is more like not overly quantitative. Certainly you can have a quant metric in there. Like I'm not saying don't, but
Okay.
maybe the bigger idea is like, I want to become the #1 real estate agent in this market.
Got it. I like that.
That's a big idea. That's an
Okay.
objective. Now, like,
Got it.
is that possible in 3 months? Okay, maybe not. Maybe that's the wrong time horizon, right? So
Right.
that's how you got to like calibrate, how you're writing and defining the goals within the time frame that you're trying to mentally establish, right? But
Okay.
maybe if you're doing an actual like annual strat plan for 12 months based on where you are, and I'm not saying this has to be, for the people listening, like the objective they should rush out and do, but maybe it's like pretty bullish. It's like, you know what, like I got a good thing going, but I'm not maybe like the best or #1 or however you want to think about that, or even measure that ultimately. But it's like, yeah, I want to become the de facto go-to realtor who represents this sort of a customer, this sort of a person doing certain sort of real estate deals, the go-to person doing 7-figure and above residential deals in this market. That's a big idea, right? That's a
Yeah.
mountain to climb. I want to get to the top of that mountain and scream, right? And cheer, right? That's
Love
an
it.
objective. And then, okay,
Okay.
cool. To achieve that sucker, what are the goals I need to accomplish along the way? Okay, I need to build the email list. I need to launch something that's going to create this much recurring revenue, or like, again, what are those more specific goals that are quantifiable? And
Yeah.
then again, back down to the strategies, which is, okay, here's the work I got to do and crush on that's going to help me get to the top of that mountain.
Okay. So that's the O, the G, and the S. What's the M?
M is metrics. So these are like, okay, what do I need to be looking at? My signals, not, 10 to 20, maybe just even 5. What are the signals I need to be looking at, say daily or weekly, that keep me calibrated? So in the email world, like you could just check your net signups, because you'll be getting people coming in, signing up. That's positive. People will be unsubscribing and churning out. It's going to happen. So
Mhm.
one metric you could be looking at on some regularity as a signal. It's not the goal. Don't confuse goals with metrics.
Right.
Um, is like, what do I need to be looking at, right? Kind of day over day or week over week, just to make sure that I'm not taking my eye off the ball there. So that's what,
Right.
those are the things that you're measuring. I think it was
And then
Peter
on the
Drucker that says, what gets measured gets managed, right?
yeah,
So it's kind
exactly.
of that notion.
Just like on the prospecting side, it would be I'm going to make X number of calls, which should
Bingo.
lead to X number of appointments. Out of X number of appointments, I should generate this many contracts. Out of this many contracts, I should get this many closes.
Exactly. And maybe closes is your goal, because
Right.
that's a more important thing. I want to close so many, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
to get you there, everything you just said is fantastic at the metrics level. So absolutely, right. And then especially if you have an assistant or someone that's helping you sort of with the administrative and operational aspects, you could define that and maybe delegate that, right? And then that person is then giving you the results of that metrics analysis, right? This kind of even harkens back to this notion again of like passive nature, like so that you don't have to do all of that work. It's important, someone should do it, but if you can find ways of having that not be you, that could help too.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's some really great strategies. I think that, if you build that into your business, it will continue to evolve, grow, build towards the future proof the business, things like that. So I love that. Couple questions to wrap with. I always like to ask the guests, in 60 seconds or less, what does it take to be a successful entrepreneur in today's market?
Uh, I'd say that you have to have a really deep understanding on the journey your customer wants to go through. And you
Mm,
need to have resiliency to continue to show up with them at every step in that journey.
mm. I like that. Easy and simple. It's
Yeah, no,
simple, but it's
that was a
hard.
good that was a good prompt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I like
Perfect.
it.
And then final question. I have two young boys at home, 5 and 7. If you were going to coach them on how to be successful in business and life, what would you tell them?
I'd say get really good at something, which stands apart from just always following your passion. And there's nothing wrong with loving what you do, to be very clear. But I've seen a lot of false starts, and this is kind of the other side of entrepreneurship, when you only follow passion, it can lead you astray. So certainly the nexus of the two is probably, the Holy Grail as well, but get really good at something so good that people can't ignore you.
Love that. Yeah, that's great advice. Well, Matt, I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your knowledge with us. There's been
This
a
is a
lot of
blast.
really, good conversation, a lot of really good insights. Make sure you guys check out Matt at smartpassiveincome.com. Also check out his all access feature, which gives you insights to access to the community, tons of training, all sorts of good stuff in there. Anything else to add on that?
No, thanks for mentioning All Access. That is our kind of all in, hence its name, community. So it's where I show up a lot. It's where Pat shows up a lot. It's where we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs probably wrestling with similar questions. It is genuinely a place where we connect, we help each other, and we grow together.
Yeah, it's been a great community. I've been definitely along for the ride for a long time. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing over there. And everybody, as always, if you like money and you like real estate, this is the show for you. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one.